Okay, so Mosaic pins, just to add a little panache to your blade. This is how I make them. I'll show you how that happens now. This will be like a step by step. Everything I've got here is everything I use to make the Mosaic pins, and I'll show you. I'll be making the copper cherry blossom mosaics that you see on my knives. So what have we got? We've got epoxy, which is G-Flex epoxy. Excellent stuff. We've got acetone. We've got epoxy pigment. You can use a range of things to dye the epoxy, to be honest with you. In the past I've even used finely ground charcoal, which is absolutely fine for the job. The secret to any kind of dyeing with epoxy is not to use too much. If you use too much, then your epoxy loses its integrity and it doesn't cure properly. So yeah, you can use a lot of things. Doesn't have to be dedicated epoxy pigment, but just be mindful of how much you're using. Always best to test it first before you go straight ahead, especially if you're using it for structural purposes like securing scales or something like that. We've got the tubes here. These are 1/4 inch copper and the thinner tubes here, 1/16 I believe, copper tubes, and there will be 5 of these going inside one of these. So what we'll do is we'll set aside the 5 that we need. And this is what we'll be using to make our first set of mosaic tubes, mosaic pins. So first thing we want to do is we want to key up the thinner inner tubes, obviously because you want the epoxy to stick to the tubes, and if they're not keyed up, I've actually seen it where an inner tube from a mosaic pin has actually slipped out because the epoxy just wasn't adhered to it. So this is just a bit of 80 grit abranet. And all I'm doing is just scoring the outside of the tube. There we go. Now I've also already, here's one I made earlier, keyed up the inside of this tube, which was basically another piece of abranet rolled up, very small piece, rolled up inside the tube and then pushed through with another length of wire, and you run that through a few times and it keys up the inside beautifully. So basically all the surfaces are nicely keyed. Now these are tubes, you've got 0 chance of keying the inside of these, so I obviously don't do that. But so that's it. Those done there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my gloves on now. First thing I'm going to do is clean the outside of these tubes and then clean the inside of the tube. So we've got some acetone here. You see how grubby they get, so always best to give them a little scrub. Now acetone, there's a health warning attached to this stuff. It's not nice to inhale, so if you can, get a little dust mask or a respirator or something, or just try not to inhale it too much because it is a little bit naughty. nice and shiny. You can see everything that's come off it now. Let's throw that in the bin. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to set these tubes inside the main tube here. And there we go. Okay. Now what I've done is I've cut the main tube itself just a little bit shorter than the length of the central pins. Now I get these supplied to me in foot-long lengths, so all I've done is basically grind off 1/2 inch of the main tube here. And the reason I've done that is because what I do now is, once I've cleaned the insides of these, and I'll show you what I'm doing there in a second, once I've cleaned the inside, then I'll mark up one of these tubes on both ends and position it so I can get it absolutely straight as it runs through the tube, so there's no twisting of these inner tubes. So I'll clean this through now, and then I'll mark it up and show you that part. Okay, so basically the way I clean these through, so I've got 2 syringes here, 2 large medical syringes here. One's marked with acetone, one's marked with epoxy. And the one I use with the acetone is, get a cup, pour some acetone in it, connect the hose to the end there, and then basically pull that through like so, and that pulls the acetone through the inside of the tubes with quite a significant amount of pressure. And cleans them all the way through like that. Now also what I'm watching for is that every tube has a stream of acetone coming out of it, because if it doesn't, that tells me it's blocked, but all that looks good. So let's blow that through. And now we can see in there some pieces of crud and whatnot, and once that all settles down, I can then decant that back into the main bottle, reuse that another time. So right, okay, so that's that looks lovely and clean through there now. Just look through the tubes. I can't see any blockages. Looks good to me. So what I'm going to do, like I say, is mark the end of one, and then push it through to the other end. Now you can see already that that's sitting on top there, but this is actually sitting round to the side. So what we need to do there is twist it until the black is sitting on top. For both. Right, so we've got the black here at 12 o'clock and the black here at about 11:30, which is not a great amount of twist, and when you cut the pins that won't be noticeable at all, but I still want to straighten it up so it's perfect. It's the little touches. So there we go. Black's at 12 o'clock there, black's at 12 o'clock there. Perfect. Now I'm happy. Alright, so there's zero twist as it rotates, it goes through the center tube, the main tube, sorry. Right, so that's what we've got there. Now, it's time to mix up the epoxy. But let me show you this first. This is the epoxy syringe. Now, because the holes in these are so small, if we can see those, very, very small indeed. When you suck it through, the epoxy being as thick as it is actually really, really tough to suck through the tube. So what I've done here is I've modified this syringe slightly, and I'll show you what it is. It's a little Kydex spring, and how that works is as I pull that up, the pressure inside here will be pulling this back down again. So as I pull it up, that'll pop open like that, and that'll stop that sliding back in again, which means I can then let go of it until the epoxy is sucked all the way through the tubes and comes up to here. Okay, because otherwise you've got to hold that with your hand, and it gets quite tedious, and it can be extremely difficult to do. So, very simple little mod there. You can jam something in there, a light or a bolt or something like that. You don't need a flash little lever like that. But I'm going to connect this up now, so it's all ready to go. Push those through there, so that's flush at that end and protrudes at that end there. So let's mix the epoxy. This isn't the fast setting stuff. You don't want the fast setting stuff. You want some reasonable work time with it. So don't get the rapid. Otherwise, you might not have enough time to work with it. So equal parts. That's more than enough, but what you don't want is to suck up any bubbles, so it's always best to make it just that little bit deeper. Right, mix this in now. Right, there's your basic mix. And now I'm going to add the pigment. Now this stuff is super condensed. I mean, it really is thick stuff. You hardly need any at all. I mean, there's 100 grams here when I bought it. I can't see me running out of this for years to come. So just a tiny little dab on the end of a coffee stirrer. Pop that there, and I'll mix just that small amount there. And you can see it's now gone really rich dark black. Well, I'll mix that around a little bit more until that's until the two parts have thoroughly mixed. Now, the good thing with this G-Flex is that you don't get a lot of air bubbles in it when you mix, and it warms up pretty quickly to the point where the air bubbles disperse, if you like. But what I will do, and what I prefer to do, is warm the mixture, and then the bubbles come to the surface. It thins the mixture down nicely, and then when you put the tube in to suck the epoxy up, you can push it down to the bottom of the cup past the air bubbles so that when you suck it up you've got no voids. Okay, so I'm going to use the heat gun now to warm this up. This is set on an extremely low heat, and you can already see the bubbles rising to the surface as it thins it out. Now, overheating epoxy causes it to cure a lot quicker, so that's not what we want to do. We just want to thin it down, get these bubbles to the surface. Another good way to do this is in a vacuum chamber, but I don't have a vacuum chamber. So let's suck this up. There we go. Okay. Now that'll be getting drawn up ever so slowly. And you can see now why I put that little spring catch on there, because holding that just with your hands would be actually probably getting quite painful by now. There we go. Can you see that now? Starting to come out the top of those. There we go. Fairly soon that'll start to come out the gap between the tubes. That's it. You see that? Now I can look all the way around that, see if there's any places where it's not coming out. Looks to me like it's coming out the top of all the central tubes. There we go. Perfect. Now what I want to do there is just release the tension on that. You can see that got sucked back down to there now, so you can see how much pressure was inside that. And I can take that out of there. And I can take that off of there. Give that a little wipe, making sure not to dislodge the tubes at all. And seal that up, and there we go. That is one set of Mosaic tubes, pins. This will cure overnight now, and I can chop that up in the morning into usable sizes. Okay, so I hope you found it useful, guys. I've got another 2 sets to do here. I won't use the same epoxy because that will start going off, so I'll use a different set of epoxy each time I do it. Nice fresh batch. Right, like I say, I hope you found that useful. Any questions, drop them in the comments box. Thanks for coming along, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace.